Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to be making a prediction slash little news story over what is going to be the main event of every single number card from UFC 301 to the final card of the year, which I believe is going to be 310. What is going to be the main event slash some of these I'll do a co-main event because some of these cards we're gonna have to double dip on some of these. I'm not complaining. I'm an MMA fan just like you. But I want to give you guys an idea of what we have to look forward to this year. And if they haven't made some of these, which they haven't, this is for the off chance that somebody that is connected to the UFC takes some fucking notes because I'm cooking with this. So I don't want to have a long-winded intro. I'm going to be going through 301 just because it is the next card and how that's going to play into 310 because 310 will be the final card of the year in December. And with that out of the way, let's get started. I have it written down right here. 301. We all know what 301 is going to be. Pantoja versus Usyk. They messed up. It was supposed to be Pereira versus Jamal Hill or Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. And to the few people that do believe that they are going to do Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev, I was one of you. And listen, would it be cool? Yes. I don't think they're going to do it because they don't want to risk Pereira losing. And they're going to pad those odds as much as they possibly can. And I can see a scenario where Pereira, they're going to hold him for an event that comes later this year. I'm just hoping he's the main event. I'm hoping he's the main event, and they're not going to do what I think they might do. But, 301, we know what it's going to be. Not very interesting. We know everybody's going to be on the card. Let's go to something that we don't know. Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier is going to be the main event of 302, start of June. Listen. People are complaining about Dustin Poirier getting a title shot. Womp womp. They offered it to Arman Tsarukyan. He said no. I understand it. That's exactly what I said was going to happen. It's not really a prediction. It's just common fucking sense. They were going to offer to fight the Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan was going to say no because, hey, I just fought on 300. I'm going to fight prepared because it's Islam Makhachev, the pound-for-pound best fighter in the UFC. So, yes, give me time. So, I figured they were going to do Islam Makhachev versus Dustin Poirier in the meantime because he wants to stay active, and I'm all for one for it. Let's not pretend that Kamaru Usman didn't get Jorge Masvidal 2 times. We can allow some easy fights. But that'll be the main event. Co-main event has already been confirmed to be Strickland versus Paulo Costa. That'll come into play later in the year, but just know that is going to be 302, and Islam and Strickland will play a big part later in the year, at least in my little prediction. UFC 303 is going to be Conor McGregor versus Chandler. Now, this is going to be the main event. There's some weird news coming out over Conor wanted it to be 3 rounds, and I'm sorry. We're already pushing it, making you the main event, despite this is your 4th comeback ever. You're fighting Michael Chandler at 170 pounds. This fight really means nothing outside of pay-per-view sales, which is really all that matters, to be honest. It sounds like I'm bashing Conor, but listen, Conor's going to make money no matter what. Now, what'll be the co-main? I could see a scenario where they do Ian Gary versus Colby Covington to hopefully try to boost Ian Gary up, is I think what the UFC is trying to do. Colby Covington wants to be on the card. I think that's the scenario that we can see Colby Covington and Conor McGregor on the same card for UFC 302. Throw in a few other promising prospects. Boom, that is a banger of a card. We also have Khamzat Chimaev versus Robert Whittaker in the middle of that for UFC Fight Night Saudi Arabia. That is going to be a crucial card moving forward. And for the 2 people who's saying, well, why aren't you doing fight nights? If the UFC doesn't give enough of a shit to not put it in an arena and just put it in the Apex, I'm not even going to bother building a card for it. Okay? We're going to do the stuff that's in an arena, and maybe we can do the fight nights that they, move out of the Apex. I'm sorry. I'm pretty snippy right now because we're going back to the Apex for Nicolau versus whoever the F. Okay? I'm sorry. I don't care. Next up, we got UFC 304. Now, there was a person that went in the comment section of my last video and laid out a few of these. And I'm hoping that I'm not just copying the guy. He said Leon versus Bilal Muhammad. He's right. He knows, yeah. It's going to be Leon versus Bilal Muhammad for the main event of UFC 304. And before you English fans start saying, boo, I'm going to throw on Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades as the co-main event, and then we put Paddy the Baddy Pimblett versus either Renato Moicano and Bobby Green. I cooked, okay? I don't care what you say. UFC 304 is going to be a banger. We got Tom Aspinall, Curtis Blades, Leon Edwards, Bilal Muhammad. And then we got Paddy Pimblett fighting either Bobby Green or Renato Moicano. Now, the only reason that I say Bobby Green or Renato and not just settled on Renato Moicano is Moicano no longer wants to fight Paddy Pimblett. He's talking about maybe fighting Dan Hooker. That's a bigger fight. It just is. Or Beneil Dariush. Like, this is a higher ranked fight other than a Paddy fight. I mean, it can be either or. But yeah, that's what's going to be 304. On to UFC 305. It's going to be in Perth, Australia. That's all we know. However, doing some digging, I was able to find two fighters that have kind of more or less agreed to this event. That being Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis. That's going to be the main event of Perth, Australia. Now listen here. You make that the main event. Strickland can do a turnaround for Perth. I think he can do it. It would be interesting to see Strickland and Adesanya at the same press conference and see how that dynamic is going to be. Throw Strickland against the loser of Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. That is something that you can do. Or if Strickland just wants to sit out, find somebody else. Find another fan favorite. Put Tai Tuivasa against somebody who's unranked. Put Romulus Despain on one of these cards. The Perth, Australia card, that's going to be the toughest one. Maybe put Dan Hooker against that. Make Dan Hooker Renato Moicano. You could also put that on this card. They may try to stack this card purely because it's Adesanya. They want to, make the most out of this opportunity. But I'm very certain Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis is going to be the main event. Because, one, Dricus du Plessis said that he didn't want to fight on UFC 300 for UFC Africa. UFC Africa isn't happening this year. So, boo-hoo. I guess we're going to have to move on. So we're going to do Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya, Perth, Australia. Next best thing. That's going to be UFC 305. Going on, UFC 306, that's going to be at the Sphere. I am going to make a very, very bold prediction here. It's going to be Sean O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili. And then you can do Valentina Shevchenko versus Alexa Grasso as the co-main event. And listen, there's going to be a few champions that are going to be in the co-mains of the next few events, but those are going to be admittedly pretty hard. But I think that is going to be the co-main of UFC 306. I think that's going to be a banger card. But O'Malley versus Merab Dvalishvili will be the main event of UFC 306. I don't even think that's a bold prediction. I think we just know that. Next up, UFC 307. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. This was the hardest one to do out of the entire thing. I could figure out what UFC 309 and 310 were. UFC 308 it's not difficult to predict. UFC 307 is one of the most difficult cards to predict because so many different things can happen. However, the two leading things that you can do, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway, or Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Now, you could put Pereira against Magomed Ankalaev on the UFC 308 card because that's going to be Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan in Abu Dhabi. 307 doesn't even have a venue yet. So I can see a scenario where that could be the Spain card and they do Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. That's enough time from 300 to 307. Max Holloway can make that turnaround. He won't be injured and Ilia Topuria will be able to fight this year. Outside of that, if they don't do 307, Ilia either won't be a main event or you're going to have to wait till next year to see him fight. So I want him to be active. So if Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev gets pushed to UFC 308 for Abu Dhabi, which I can see them doing, make Ilia Topuria fight Max Holloway for the main event. Make that in Spain, make it wherever. So either Pereira or Ilia for the main event of UFC 307. Next up, UFC 308, I kind of already told you, it's going to be Islam Makhachev versus either Arman Tsarukyan or another contender. I can see the UFC pulling some crazy bullshit, make Conor McGregor fight Islam Makhachev, but I think what's going to happen if Conor McGregor does end up beating Michael Chandler, I could see a Conor McGregor versus Charles Oliveira card early next year. That's a bold prediction of mine, but I can see them do that because Conor McGregor wants a tune-up fight against Michael Chandler and then gets a legit title contender fight. But Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan is going to be the main event of UFC 308 in Abu Dhabi. He's expressed interest in fighting there. He wanted to fight Arman Tsarukyan. Arman Tsarukyan didn't want to do the 302 fight, so I guess why not book this fight in the meantime? I like it. 309. I don't even have a venue for this card because they haven't given me one. However, I have a fairly confident main event because it's the only thing that fits in here. John Jones versus either Stipe Miocic or Tom Aspinall. The reason there was a cut there is I completely fucked it up the last time, and I want it to be a cool reveal. But John Jones versus Stipe or Tom Aspinall, I believe will be the main event of UFC 309 just because of how things are turning out here. John Jones is going to have to make a comeback at either 309 or 310. And I could see a scenario where John Jones doesn't want to fight on the same card as the dude who's going to be at 310. And the UFC views it as, okay, well, we can stack 2 cards. So we can put John Jones versus Stipe. And hey, you can put another, you could put like the flyweight champion. You could put fucking Kayla Harrison as the co-main event of this. Like, there's, in all my predictions, there is not a single women's main event because, I'm sorry, there's no stars that could do it. But there you go. John Jones versus either Stipe or Tom Aspinall. It's about what the UFC wants to do, but I believe that John Jones will fight at UFC 309. And finally, what I believe is going to be the final card of the year, UFC 310, I believe will be Israel Adesanya or Dricus du Plessis, the winner of that fight, the middleweight champion, against who I believe is going to be Robert Whittaker, Khamzat Chimaev. I think if Khamzat Chimaev gets a title shot this year, it's going to be at UFC 310 in December. Israel Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev is what I have written down because I believe Israel beats Dricus and I believe Khamzat beats Robert Whittaker. That is the fight that I think is going to happen at UFC 310. As far as the co-main, it's about how things are going to line up. I could see a scenario where they do like a Leon or whoever the champion is. You do a Leon versus Savkat, or you could put Leon Edwards against Savkat for the UFC 308 card with as like the co-main or the feature fight of Islam Makhachev versus Arman Tsarukyan. It's about how things are going to line up. But as far as main events, I'm pretty confident Adesanya will be the main event at UFC 310 against Khamzat Chimaev. And there you go. That is going to be every single numbered card for the rest of the year. Hopefully I get at least a few of these right. I think I'll get quite a few. The only ones that I'm like 50-50 on is 307 because I have no information. And 309 will be a Jones fight. It's a matter of how they're going to do it. But there you go. That's who I believe is going to be the main event of each of the numbered cards that's to come out for the rest of the year. Tell me your predictions in the comment section down below. Leave a like, comment, share the video if you have friends that you think would enjoy it. And with that out of the way, adios, guys.